Depression is a kind of rejection and emotional blunting of the world. It's filled with this apathy and indifference. To exert effort seems futile, really, and you're sort of just devoid and deprived of the life force that normally orients and encourages your engagement with the world. The question of why do anything just seems a silly and absurd question. And in this sort of absurdity, there's a real deep paralysis of action. You don't feel motivated to do anything. Your body's just aching for this kind of deep rest. And that leads to many people, when they're in these cycles, they feel like all they can do is just rest, is sleep, and do nothing. And this is obviously not a particularly pleasurable state to be in when you feel like all your life goals or your life projects just seem devoid of meaning and you've got no real encouragement to pursue them. And, obviously this raises a number of different questions. What is it that can deprive us of our drive to engage with the world? What can zap you of your zest, of your motivation? Because, often these periods, they can strike you at the most random of times and seem almost just devoid of any real reason or logic for when they come. But, sometimes when you do sort of look inwards, you can sort of identify different reasons for why you've fallen into a depressive cycle. And, if I'm going to talk about, what is this cycle like? What is this period like? It's this period of life where, the colour of the world seems almost drained. It's more of a grey, blunted colour. Everything seems painted with this paintbrush of just myrrh and emptiness and hollowness. And when we have this sort of this drive and energy drained from us, all we can do in such periods is rest, I think. Deep rest. And often we'll when we feel this sort of way, we'll fill our lives with vacuous distraction, with short-term dopaminergic gratification. We escape into really just addictive tendencies to try and chase a sort of fleeting sense of meaning and pleasure. And this is why I say that, in the void of meaning that is created by depression, we will often fill it with addiction and hedonism, which does provide a temporary sense of respite from this. But it is also a sort of a pattern of activity that will spiral us deeper into nihilistic abandonment. There's no real deep and lasting sustenance for the soul in such activities. All they are is just a negation and escape from the perils of life. It's not something that affirms the meaning and joy of life. It's only really just a desire to flee. And I think the only way out of this dark tunnel is the discovery of a hierarchy of value that goes beyond immediate sense pleasure. And I've talked many times on this podcast that You know, the pursuit of immediate pleasure and its gratification is it's a perverse hedonic treadmill that, you know, always leads to a kind of hedonic adaptation. Um, you know, this is tolerance in the case of, you know, drug addiction. You know, you need more and more of this sort of pleasure activity to gratify that sense. But, you know, the goalposts are always shifting. You always need more. You're never really quenched and satiated with a sense of enoughness. Maybe you'll have it for a few moments, but, you know, eventually, you know, your dopamine levels will dip back below baseline, and that will create that sense of craving that gets you just more and more deeper into this cycle of desire and suffering. And, you know, it's when you're in these cycles, you will feel depressed, and you shouldn't run away from that feeling, because depression is really the body's signal that something is unbalanced. And, you know, we can choose to flee from the signal, or we can choose to listen and open ourselves up to this sense of affliction. And, you know, the first option, the fleeing, the escape, it's the easiest one to do. That's why so many people do it. And, you know, I don't condemn people for picking this option. You know, I'll be a hypocrite. And often this option of opting towards what's easiest and most comfortable, it's done unconsciously as part of our body's innate drive for comfort and aversion towards discomfort. And, you know, I've picked this option many times in my life and probably continue to, although I've tried to cultivate more and more awareness and not to feel shame for my body's decision to do this. But, you know, the first stage, obviously, in addressing a certain negative pattern is to first become aware of it and to sort of notice when you are sort of engaging in behaviours that seek to escape and ignore and neglect it, you know. But what I would say is that when you do try and distract yourself and avoid confronting these things, you know, it doesn't get rid of it. It just prolongs your suffering, and eventually you will have that confrontation with reality, where you can't really ignore it no longer. And the longer we procrastinate it, the longer we avoid our problems, it just makes the final confrontation just more and more damaging. But sometimes we almost need that rock bottom in order to actually put in the changes, the psychological shifts that, you know, ultimately will improve our lives and ultimately will mature our souls and our psychologies. You know, suffering and pain are nature's teachers, really. That's why they're there, you know. And, you know, we shouldn't avoid them. We should listen to them and allow them to teach us lessons on how to live our lives better. You know, I think that in these states of depression, where the world is blunted, like nothing is worth doing, it's almost like this existence where you feel like a zombie and you're just walking around. You know, I think the analogy to the zombie is quite fitting, really, because they're these undead beings who are still walking, and they're sustained only by consuming brains, you know, consuming some kind of life, but they're never sustained. They're perpetually hungry and wandering. I think it's quite a fitting image. And it's sad to see that a lot of people can go about their lives in this sort of zombified state where they never truly feel alive. They never feel truly filled with the zest that we often feel nostalgic for from our childhood. You know, some people almost long for that childlike sense of everything being new and exciting, and the exploratory nature of life is, you know, just everywhere. You know, everything is exciting, everything is new. And I think this sort of makes me think of how the cure, or the way to remedy these depressive cycles, is to find those things, find those activities, those projects that make you feel truly alive, that gives you that real deep sense of vigor and excitement to go out and do, to go out and act in the world. You know, when we don't feel alive, you know, we are in that zombified state of being undead and just searching, operating from this sense of lack, this sense of craving. But when you are operating from this cognitive frame of craving, nothing is going to satiate you. It's just illusions and illusions. You get it and then you realize that wasn't it. So you try and get another thing, you realize that wasn't it. And then you're just constantly living not in the moment, you know. You're living in this sort of imaginative world of imagining yourself being complete and alive. And, you know, in our sort of materialistic world, we often think that the thing that will make us feel alive are these sort of status symbols, these goods, that car, that house, that this or that thing. You know, it's and I don't put any of that down, because obviously we are in this sort of physical world. None of us are these super duper detached yogis. You know, we're forced to, you know, we need to eat. You know, we need a house to live in. But, you know, having your entire value system depend on the pursuit of physical material goods, it's not going to quench your deep thirst for meaning, you know. At least it doesn't for me at all. Like, I know that, you know, whilst I am sort of motivated by the pursuit of, you know, freedom from want, freedom from the insecurity of being in poverty, I know that what really satiates my soul is, I don't know, being of value and being of service to something beyond myself, really, you know. And that's why, you know, when I hear that people benefited from, say, the work that I put out here on my podcast, people who have sort of really valued me for the contributions, the work that I put in, you know, that does genuinely make me feel, yes, I'm onto something here. You know, it's that feedback from the world which is telling you you're on the right path. And obviously you don't want to get too detached, and you don't want to lose yourself in trying to conform to the external world, because you can almost just get detached from your own internal drives. And I think there is a real deep strength that you can summon when you're able to work on your own sort of project, even when you have little to no positive feedback from the outside world. If you're able to sort of, you know, being able to summon that internal drive simply from yourself and not from the external, I think that is a real sort of deep, authentic source of value. But and yeah, it's you know, there's many different things that will bring us pleasure and joy in life. And you know, these sorts of the lower pleasures of say addictive distractions and just scrolling on TikTok or fast food. You know, these they will never provide you. They will never solve your problems. They just let you escape from the deeper problems of yourself. And I think these cycles of activity, they don't challenge or grow you. They really atrophy you. They don't make you feel really, really alive. I guess sort of a question that I want to sort of prompt you, the listener, to think about is the problem of discovering and identifying what truly makes you alive. You know, what is it that makes you feel truly engaged in life, that provides you with vigor and challenge, that tests you, that confronts you with the limits of your abilities. You know, because sometimes we don't really want to be confronted with these limits. It makes us feel small, but we have to feel small, you know. You can't live with the delusion that you can just do anything. You know, you've got to discover what is it that you are genuinely good at, and what is it that, you know, you can't do. You know, you need to have that humility of being confronted with your limits. Because it's only through confronting our limits that we can then expand them through work, through like genuine, challenging work. And it's only with those sort of challenges that you are afforded authentic opportunities, and the opportunity of both failure and success. You know, you need both of them. You do need failure. I think if you can sort of open yourself up to failure, open yourself up to making mistakes, you can then learn from those mistakes. And that's, you know, that's where the work is, you know. I guess even with depression, it's a matter of framing, you know, because people can get bogged down with the failures of depression. But like I've always said in the past, you know, these periods, these difficult periods are also the periods where we truly become conscious of our limits and truly become conscious of what it is that is holding us back, that's holding us within these negative cycles. When you can confront them, then you are actually able to work through them. You know, you shouldn't run away from these things. We shouldn't run away from fire because it may burn us. You know, it's the fire that really molds us, I think. And you know, I don't encourage recklessness. I don't encourage people to take on silly risks. But I don't encourage remaining stagnant in life, stagnant in a sort of a false paradise of comfort. You know, comfort is really the thief of a rich, fulfilling life. It seduces us with the allure of, you know, pleasure in the now, whilst really stealing our future and our potential. I think that a fulfilling life requires the pursuit of many different projects, you know, projects that test and demand of you the cultivation of will, the cultivation of your capacities that then allow you to discover your strengths and your weaknesses. You know, like I said, many of us are afraid to confront these weaknesses, choosing to live in the delusion of our limits. But you know, this is foolish. You know, you can only expand your limits by first discovering and identifying them. You know, and you know, this expansion of your limits is by definition requires work. And yes, it is difficult, but would you want it any other way? Do you just want to do easy things your entire life? I just think it's not satisfying. It really isn't satisfying. I don't want to sort of fetishize work. I think that a lot of people live in the illusions of hyper productivity, but I think that work, insofar as it engages you with the world, engages you with things beyond yourself, and where it does put you in a position where you feel like you are genuinely providing value to yourself and other people around you, and also when it challenges you, when it tests you, when it gives you those opportunities for developing your abilities, that's one of the most meaningful and life affirming things there are. Do people feel like they have more meaning when they're just retired? You have so many people who they retire from work and then they have that sort of existential crisis of what to do with all that time. And, is a life of leisure, just doing nothing, drinking martinis on the beachside, is that going to give you what your soul wants? Like, I'm not putting down those sorts of things. I think that rest and leisure is an important thing. But I think that it is our life project, it's our life work that is the real, genuine source of meaning. I think, it's only through those sort of things that we discover and develop our competencies. And, in the sort of work that we do, you are taking sovereignty over your life, and your mind when you are cultivating what you are truly competent at. So I guess sort of when you are in these sort of burnout periods where you almost feel that depression, that you feel that lack of meaning, I think it's important to then take those periods as opportunities to recalibrate and discover what is it that you are competent at? What is it that you can do to bestow value to both yourself and other people? What is it that will connect you to the world in a meaningful manner and will allow you to flourish from the fruits of your labor? I think principal to this journey is the cultivation of discernment and attention. Attention dictates the direction of your life force and is essentially how you allocate your finite faculties of mind. When you cultivate this ability of attention and as well discernment through mindfulness, you will free your mind from distractions, the distractions in this world that will attempt to parasitize your attention, spiraling you into bullshit and just pointlessness. Distractions, they're fucking everywhere, man. I think fundamentally with life, much of our identity is contained in the activities and the things that we habitually attend to. And, this is why it is so vital to cultivate mindfulness, such that you are then allowed to have a buffer, really, against the sea of distraction and the sea of bullshit that will seek to seduce you. This is, of course, a central challenge of our modern media environment, the spectre of vacuous distraction. We encounter it every time we turn on our phones and we mindlessly scroll through media feeds and whatnot. Distraction will zap us of our vital life force, leading us down these long tunnels of attention that really go nowhere. You're lost in this labyrinth of your mind. And in this labyrinth of your mind, your attention is essentially being extracted and commodified for profit. It's your data. but you don't really own your data. As soon as you go onto these social medias, your data is, being taken from you. So, what do you do with this? What do you do with the distractions that are everywhere and which are conspiring to, just feed more and more on your attention? Like I said many times, the only remedy is mindfulness. It is being able to notice again and again the innate distractibility of our own minds. And through this exertion of effort that you do through noticing your distractions, you can, over time, train your faculty of focus, which really gives you the greatest power of all, sovereignty over your own mind. And when you can develop this sovereignty, you will make yourself very, very effective, but also dangerous.